The 4 C's are consistency, clarity, connections, and coaching. So it seems like a lot, and it is. But if you really, really want something like a real estate business or something to help get you financially free, maybe it's stock trading or franchise investing or crypto or, your own business or something, right? A service that you want to do. I think you got to lean in to one of those 4 C's that you're most naturally tuned towards.
Are you looking to achieve massive success in your life without dealing with costly investment nightmares? If yes, then this is the podcast for you. Here, we provide engineers and busy professionals all the secrets and strategies to create multiple streams of income, build generational wealth, and live a meaningful life by design. Here's your host, Ted Patel.
Welcome, Decoding Cash Flow listeners. We have an amazing guest today, Derek Clifford. Derek is a multifamily real estate investor, fund manager, author, and host of 3 Degrees of Freedom podcast. He retired from his corporate job in September 2021 and have invested in more than 400 apartment units through his company, Elevate Equity. His mission is to help corporate employees and self-employed entrepreneurs achieve the 3 degree of freedom through real estate investment. Derek, welcome to the show. It's nice to have you here.
Ted, it's awesome to be here, man. Thank you for inviting me.
All right. So yeah, it will be a fun podcast today. So let's before we dive deep into any specific segment, right, Derek, if you can give our listeners a little bit background about yourself and what's your current focus.
Sure, yeah. So thank you. First of all, it's an honor to be here. Thank you, Ted, for having me on. I am an engineer by training, project manager by profession, and a real estate investor at heart. And I've been traveling the world basically over the last 3.5 years, and I left my job in the last 2 years. No, 2.5 actually now.
Okay.
And we've been digital nomads, my wife and I, ever since then. So we're doing all of our work fully remote. But just to back up a little bit, went to school as an engineer and then met my wife, who was doing pre-med in Washington State. And so I moved from Texas to Washington State. And then after, getting married basically in Washington, then we ended up in California because my wife went down there for a residency for her position. And that's where I got my first project management position. And, I got my start in real estate by the condo that my wife had owned at the time. It was a condo that she had purchased literally like 2 months before the 2008 crash. So condo was like, I think she bought it for 250,000 or 275,000 or something. And then 3 months later, it was worth like 90 or something ridiculous, right? And even though she finished school like 4 years later, and then we were looking to leave the state because she got a residency in California, we couldn't really do anything with it because we were both like just out of school, right? And we couldn't afford to write that check because it was going to be like $100,000 that we were still underwater from the original mortgage, right? From the value versus where it was. It hadn't recovered. So we had to rent it out and we just became landlords by default. And, at the time I was really into like Dave Ramsey and trying to figure out like, how can I retire early? How can I like improve my financial situation? So following his advice, I did some calculations and figured out like how long it would take me to be able to retire. And it would take me like 30 years or something, like given my current salary and what my expected raises were at the time. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like that is way, way too long. Like it just scared me. And then, as we're literally driving from Washington down to California, somewhere in Oregon, we get a notification that our tenants, our newly leased tenants who moved into the place that Sophie was in, that my wife was in, they sent us a rent payment. And then all of a sudden a light bulb went off, Ted. I was like, man, if we did this on accident, like imagine what would happen if we did it on purpose, because this is exactly what I was looking for. It's net worth growth over time and it's cash flow. And there's tax benefits and all of these great things that you and I both know and love about real estate, which is why we do it. So I started to really get into it. I learned as much as I could for like a year. That was when Bigger Pockets was like really big with Brandon and Brandon Turner and David Green on the podcast, and even Josh Dworkin for a little bit of time, like listening to all of that and learning as much as I could. And then I bought my first single family rental. And then eventually, like as I was working my PM job in the Bay Area, I had my high salary in the California Bay Area. And then I started buying like single family rentals in Indiana, like once a month, because my paychecks were literally the down payments for properties out in the Midwest, which is insane. And so I bought a whole bunch of properties and then eventually got limited with loans. And so I went into multifamily, did some commercial. Then I ran out of my own money and doing JVs with other people, ran out of my own capital, and then started doing syndications and met up mentors and kind of went on, from there. And then eventually with COVID, we went remote and eventually realized that my potential with real estate investing was more than what my job was requiring me to do on a day-to-day basis. And then that's how the 3 Degrees of Freedom was born. Started with remote or location independence, and then got some time independence, and then that led into our financial independence. So anyway,
So,
hopefully that wasn't too long, but
no, no, that's a great insight of what you have been doing. So do you still own the single family homes, or you have sold that out and totally pivoted to multifamilies now?
Yeah, good question. We actually had the option to do that, but we decided that just the management of it and
Mhm.
the property management, the maintenance, the capex that was needed to manage all these things, it just didn't make any sense. Like it
Mm.
made sense to take all, 16, 17 of our properties and basically consolidate them, sell them, and then move them into multifamily. So we did it in like a stepwise fashion. And what we did, Ted, was we did 1031 with like 5 or 6 of my most profitable properties. And
Mm.
those 6 properties essentially turned into a 36 unit apartment building. So we
And
eventually kept doing that with joint ventures over and over again with other people.
all right, and for the listeners, right, who Derek just mentioned 1031 exchange. So for the listeners who are not aware of the 1031 exchange, Derek, if you can brief them about it.
Yeah, for sure. And please keep me level here if
Yeah,
you hear that I'm not saying anything right, but hopefully since I did it, I can explain it well.
yeah,
But all it is when you sell a property, there is normally a tax in effect that goes, which is the capital gain. So if
yeah,
you buy a house for $100,000 and then you sell it for $200,000 or maybe 250, maybe that's a better way to break it down. There's $150,000 worth of gain, right? And the federal government and some states will actually want to they want to actually grab some of that capital gain for themselves. So depending on what you make, if your $150,000 is your capital gain for selling a property for 250, then the federal government will take anywhere between 15 and 30% depending on your salary.
yeah,
And so that's what would be what you sell it. But if you do a 1031, you're rolling those gains and you're deferring those capital gains taxes into the next property. So your basis, your old basis from the original tax basis, rolls over into the new property, and you don't have to pay those taxes until you sell. Now, the trick, Ted, and I think you know this as well as any other great real estate investor, is that you can keep 1031ing for forever as long as the
forever.
regulations allow you to. And so
Yeah.
that's what we've been doing so far. Yeah.
And the other thing is there's no tax on refinancing. So
Yes.
either you're doing 1031 exchanging or keep refinancing as long as the property value goes up.
100%. That's the blueprint. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So now coming back to what you mentioned earlier, right? You left your job in 2021, and since then you are just enjoying the freedom. Like you're moving from place to place, enjoying different locations, different countries. Tell us something about this 3 degree of freedom that you talked about. If How did you achieve it?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. This is what gets me the most excited because it's the why behind what we all do. I'm a huge believer in people should be previewing the life that they're trying to build right now. By that, I mean, if you want location independence and time independence, there's ways for you to seek out pockets of it right now as a person, even if you're working a full-time job. So that may take some planning, it may take work, but if you have kids and you have like a spouse or something, why couldn't you plan to take the entire summer and go to Portugal, right? And just live in Portugal for 3 months? Like there's nothing stopping you from doing that. The kids aren't in school. Your spouse, if they're in agreement with it and you guys have planned for like a couple of years to make it happen, why couldn't you go and rent an Airbnb in Portugal or where it's very cheap, or Greece or Italy or something, right? Pick it, make some financial goals, make sure you're saving up enough money to do it, and preview what that lifestyle is like. Go out there and actually do it, right? And see what that feels like. So the reason we're doing that is because there's some health issues in the family, and we realized that everyone was mortal. So when COVID happened, we had just bought a house, and when we were in that house, after we had fixed it all up and everything, after about a year and a half, we were like, we moved there for my wife's job because she was working at a brick and mortar at the time. And we were like, given everything that's happened right now, if we were to be completely free and buy this house, would we buy it still today? And the answer to that question for both of us was no, because we moved there because of my wife. She was doing a brick and mortar thing there. So what we decided to do is like, well, why don't we just like sell the house and go travel around California for a little while, and then we'll come back to Brentwood and we'll buy another house and whatever. We'll wait for the market to settle and everything. So here's the funny thing. We started traveling and we realized, Ted, my financial goals for passive income was set for the Bay Area, which is similar to like New York or New Jersey, right? Like you got to have at least like 10 or 15K just to survive, each month in these regions. But it turns out that when you're in the Midwest and you're traveling in Utah and Colorado and, going out to Indiana and Texas and all these places, you can live really well for half that, for like $5,000, a month with your food, even an Airbnb. And so what I like to help people think about is that by getting location freedom, we enabled financial freedom because we were able to change our expenses. The time freedom is a whole nother piece. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah.
You're going to say something.
No, what I'm saying is, as long as both the spouse has an option to work remotely, or they can take time off for 3 months, right?
Correct. That's absolutely right. Now, if you really want this bad enough and both you and your spouse are on board, there's nothing stopping you from trying to make those arrangements with your current employer, or slowly starting to like try to find a position over the next 3 years or something, 2 years, that gets you a similar pay with maybe a little bit less responsibility, but also being fully remote, because that is now, I mean, COVID changed the world. Like now there's more of those positions out there than ever. And so you can start to try to slowly lateral yourself into those positions while you have a job, if this is really something that you want to do, right? Otherwise, some people are very lucky and they just say that they want that from their current employer, and they may be able to get it right from who they're working with currently. But in any event, that's kind of a technique of how to get the location independence. And the location independence is like half the equation, because once you're there, right, like you can open up your laptop, yes, and work 7-8 hours a day, or even 9 hours a day if you're a tech employee or have a high demanding job. But you could be doing it on a beach in Portugal, right? And you can fold your laptop down once it's done and go out there and take care of it. But you're not time free. You still have your job, but at least you're locationally free because you have the choice to go wherever you'd like to go. And then you still need the financial freedom. But the point is they get to preview what life you're building towards. And if it's not your cup of tea, right, then you don't have to waste your time worrying about trying to get to financial freedom when it's not something that you even want anyways, right? So that's kind of what it is. And then, I found too that as you're motivated, like as you do these things, you start to get more motivated, that when you're traveling, you're like, man, this is really, really cool. And then your brain starts to figure out, how can I do more of this? And then your brain starts working on how, now that I'm out here, like it sucks that I'm chained to the desk. Like, how can I get my job done quicker? Or how can I, what systems can I implement to make this easier on me so that I can do part of my job on the beach and then the other part at my desk, right? Like little things like that. You start brainstorming, right? And these things start coming to life. And then the final part of the story is, out of necessity, we were traveling, all over Europe and everything. And we got a virtual assistant and started training him up. And I'm really good with systems and processes because that's my engineering brain coming out. And I was able to basically have all of my asset management and acquisition and everything, like all of our criteria, all of our marketing and everything done by our virtual assistants. that really doesn't take me more than about 4 hours a week. And
That's
that's
good.
pretty much where we've gotten at this point. We have 2 VAs now, and we're probably going to be looking to hire another one in the next couple of months, I think. So, so yeah, there you go. You've got your time freedom, your location freedom, and then your financial freedom as well. All different layers and different approaches.
Yeah, that's great. But before you got to this level, right? While you were working the corporate job, what are the steps that you took to get to this level? Because you have to balance out both the things.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, when you're working a corporate job, like for those who are out there and listening to the story and thinking, oh man, I don't know if this is something that I can do. You can, because if I can do it, you definitely can. And so one of the things that I would recommend that you look at is the 4 C's. These are the things that kind of helped me get and escape my full-time position.
Mhm.
Um, the 4 C's are consistency, clarity, connections, and coaching. So it seems like a lot, and it is. But if you really, really want something like a real estate business or something to help get you financially free, maybe it's stock trading or franchise investing or crypto or your own business or something, right? A service that you want to do. I think you got to lean in to one of those 4 C's that you're most naturally tuned towards. For me, I'm an engineer and an integrator, and I love like regularity. I like doing things in a consistent way. So I just led into consistency. I leaned into that. And what ended up happening was once I got consistent, sometimes I would head in, Ted, to the office. I would head in. This is back when people were driving into the office, right? I
Mhm.
would drive in at like 6 or 7 in the morning before the traffic started building up in California Bay Area, and I would sit there from 6:30 to or 7 to 8 o'clock when my job started, right? And so I would sit there, even if I didn't know what I was doing for that day, I would dedicate that first hour in the morning when my mind was freshest and my mind was thinking the best and quickest, right?
Mhm.
I devoted that time only to real estate for like 4 years, every day
Okay.
going into the office. It was that 1 hour, right, that started, and I just focused on real estate. And like I said, even if I didn't have anything to focus on, my goal was to put a plan together for the rest of the week of what I was going to focus on with my time for the rest of the week. So I leaned into that consistency. And what was funny about it is that consistency then brought me clarity of what my goal was.
Mhm.
And after a little bit of time, it led me to want to reach out to other people that were doing things like me, connections. And then finally, I got some coaches, right? Like I found some mentors, people that have been there before and a few steps ahead of me that was able to do it. Now, if you're someone that's like, I just want, I know someone that like knows all of this and I really like what they're doing, then you could just jump straight to coaching, and your coach will be able to get you definitely on the right path of where you're going to go. And then your consistency is going to have to follow, because you're going to have to be able to meet the demands of the coach. And then you're going to have to be clear as to why you're meeting the coaching. So the clarity comes in. And then eventually you're going to have a network to plug into and the connections, right? To help feed in. So either one of the C's, like if you have a really clear vision, super clear on what you want, that clarity comes first. Then you can get your connections and coaching and then consistency. It doesn't matter. As long as you pick one of them to start with, the others you're going to follow. And then what happens right behind that is your dreams and all of your aspirations will start to become realized after, all those 4 C's start locking into place. So I'm not sure. I want to ask you, Ted, does that resonate with you, or does that make
No, no,
sense?
no, absolutely. See, the thing is, you mentioned consistency, right? Consistency with discipline, you know, uh, uh, that makes a difference in the long term. And as you said, you have to plan your day. You have to plan every day. First, you plan your day. Once you're good with that, you start planning your week. Once you're good at that, you start planning your month and year, and you will know, you will have the whole roadmap to success.
Yeah,
So
love it.
some people just start the other way around. They plan the whole what their vision is. They trace it back to the yearly achievements, monthly achievements, what they want to do this week, and then but at least the plan needs to be in place to achieve anything in life. It's like, set up the sail, as Joe Rogan says, right? You
Mhm.
need to have a clear vision. You need to set the sail in the right direction. when the wind blows, you will be, marching towards your goal.
That's right. And even if you're off by a little bit, it doesn't matter because the direction is right. It's like
Yeah.
a plane, I forgot where this expression came from, but it's like a plane leaving from Seattle heading towards Miami, right? Like the two longest points across the United States that you can go,
Yeah.
right? That plane, believe it or not, is never perfectly on course for like 99.8 or something percent of the time. It isn't, because it's just little adjustments to get there, because you know how exactly correct you have to be to just set the direction in one direction and go. Life doesn't
It
work
doesn't
that
work
way.
that way.
It
Yeah.
never works that way. You always have to be like kind of iterating, and with the consistency comes the iteration, and with the iteration comes like problem solving and getting things figured out, and then
Yeah.
finding out where your issues are and what your mind blocks and your limiting beliefs and all these things, and just busting right through them.
Yeah.
And it doesn't
And,
happen without
yeah.
consistency.
And
Yep.
it's the you talked about the adjustments, right? You can only make the adjustments when you know where you're going.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Or the general direction, right? Just
Mm-hmm.
something. Because here's the other thing too, and I have to tell this story as well. Like, when I first started investing in real estate, like I think the first time I tried to invest, like after we got our accidental property from Washington, I tried to actually get like a single family home to rent out in the California Bay Area. And after a year of like listening to everything I could in all of my spare time, um, I started looking for property, and it took me like 8 months to
Mm-hmm.
buy a property, even though I had plenty of cash, right? I had everything that I needed. I knew I knew more than the realtors did, right? That were finding me the properties. Um, but I still just couldn't pull the trigger. And you know what it was? It was fear. And until I was able to shift my mindset around the fact that like imperfect action is the way to go, and
Yeah.
when I realized that, like, I just don't know what I don't know, and I'm gonna change my attitude from not trying to make $1 million from the first deal or the first investment, but trying to learn something for the long term.
Yeah.
As soon as that attitude shifted, I got something under contract right away and signed the paperwork, had no regret, right? Because I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't know what I don't know. The worst that can happen is that maybe I lose a few $1,000 or something. I can just turn around and resell it.
Yeah.
It's not a big deal. Let's just take a chance. And so that's exactly what I did. And I haven't looked back since. So
Uh,
that's a really
uh,
big thing.
no, absolutely. I also agree with you. That is never 100%. That is never like, okay, I'll get the best deal ever. Waiting for the best deal. It's never going to happen. You
Doesn't
just
happen.
jump in. You see you. Of course, you have to educate yourself, right? You cannot just blindly fall for anything that comes across. So you got to educate yourself, build a network, and then take the chance. All right.
Yes.
Sometimes what will happen is you might make money, you might not in the first deal, but the knowledge, the experience that you will gain is much more worth than even if you lose 500, 5K, 10K.
Yep.
On the deal. Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Because even if you do make a mistake and you're still committed, as long as you keep moving forward,
Yeah.
a failure is always only temporary. It's a stepping stone to success, because
Yeah.
it's a learning lesson. If you're taking, you know, you're trying to get into your very first deal, and you end up like it doesn't work out well, like you end up losing money from it, either on a monthly basis, or actually you're losing it like when you on the capital event, right? You're forced to sell or something, and you lose $10,000, but you stay with it and you stay consistent. The funny thing is that you are going to, and this happened to me,
Mhm.
those lessons will reverberate in future investments, and they're going to pay you dividends, like massive dividends, because what you
Mhm.
learn on the small scale is going to scale up to the big scale. And so I just encourage people to stick with the path, right? And keep doing things no matter what it is you're doing in life, whether it's real estate investing, or trying to teach yourself new skills. That consistency and being able to stick with it and understand that failure is just a part of it. It's just a feedback mechanism, right?
Mhm.
It's nothing
Yeah.
more. You just got to keep going with it and detach yourself from the result. Be more attached to the journey.
Yeah. Well said. So,
Yeah.
Derek, let's jump onto a little bit multifamily part of it.
Sure.
Tell us something about your first multifamily deal. How did you come across that?
Oh my goodness. Okay. Well, so my first multifamily deal, I made every mistake you could make. Um, it was insane. It was really crazy. We bought an 18 unit multifamily in Indianapolis from a wholesaler that was mostly in single families, but they were doing some multifamily at the time.
Mhm.
We bought it with only 15 days of due diligence. We bought it with no boots on the ground partner being there in Indy. It was just me and like 3 or 4 other guys doing it from California.
Mhm.
And it was a D class property. Like we had people in there. This is when you know there's a red flag, Ted. When we were under contract for like, it was only 2 weeks, right? It was only like 15, 16 days or something that we were, where we were like in the, what do you call it? It's the due diligence or the
Yeah.
under
The due
contract.
diligence under contract. Yeah, due diligence
Yeah.
period.
So during that period, about a week after we got all the ink signed and the earnest money into title, the the seller came through the broker. The broker's like, I don't know how to say this. This is a really weird request, but the seller is asking if you can forward 5 grand from the earnest money to pay for a furnace that's like failing. And
Mm.
I was like, I've never, I'd done a lot of single families and I'd never heard that before. And I didn't know if that was a normal thing in like the multifamily side, but that was a huge red flag. And basically from there, Ted, like we went through this adventure of contractors stealing from us. Like we went in to go rehab all the units and everything, but basically we had contractors going in and taking photos of other units, right, that they were working on and sending them pictures to us that they were progress photos for our building, and then they were stealing our materials. So it was just insane. Like we ended up spending 3 times the amount per door that we needed to in order to get all of the units turned over and rented. Um, but luckily, like that was in 2018 and 2019, and between then and that point in time, I had bought other properties that were doing better. Otherwise, like I probably would have never continued in multifamily if I had just had that experience, right? But I kept going with it, and I had partnership issues as well with like differences of opinion on the ownership side because I basically partnered with someone I didn't know very well. Like it was a common connection from someone, and their communication style was different, and they went in and fired all of my contacts without telling me. Like they flew into the they flew into Indiana from California and fired the PM, and I had no contacts left. And it was insane, like what had happened and all the growth that came from that. But that was really, really difficult. So anyway, it's a really long-winded answer, but I like to basically look at that deal as one that I cut my teeth on, and gave me the authority to be able to say, I've made that mistake, I've made that mistake, and I've made that mistake, so that when I'm working with investors, they can feel assured that they don't have to learn those same mistakes that I did on my own with my own money.
Yeah, that's pretty scary.
Yeah.
The deal, whatever you explain, the deal. Maybe I don't know why you didn't back out when they gave you that red flag.
I,
Maybe you were.
I I was just too hungry, I think. I think I was just like I was super excited to lock something up because it was,
Yeah.
believe it or not, like it was 18 units for $275,000.
That's why.
It's
Yeah,
attractive, right?
it's
But
attractive. Yeah.
like it took us, because of all the unit turns and everything, like we ended up putting in about 900K to everything because of all the
Mhm.
theft and all of the electric work that we needed to do. Good news is that obviously it's doing really well right now because it's an up and coming part of town, which we knew, and the rents are up and we have all the units occupied, so it's like doing really, really well. But man, a very, very trying time for
Mhm.
sure.
So, what are the other areas you focus on? Any specific criterias that you have in mind for the multifamily properties?
Yeah, recently, like we've actually been slowing down a lot in acquisitions just because it's harder to make deals pencil. And
Yeah,
I can't ask for my investors to bring in capital into a deal that I wouldn't do myself, right?
that's
Into an
true.
investment that I wouldn't put my own significant amounts of money in. So we've been seeing a lot of things. And what we look for is it's got to be a minimum of like 15% IRR, which is a pretty typical hurdle.
Mhm.
We look for cash flow around 7% still nowadays. And we also look for immediate value add. So all of our rent growth, we assume none. All of the
Mhm.
growth that happens is forced appreciation through things that we know currently with the current market. So It's very easy actually to do that in the Midwest, Ted, because there's a lot of distress there, and just simply bringing market rents up to the current value, you can really like multiply the value of the building because the numbers are so small, right?
Mhm.
Like you bring in lots of capital, and then the dollar in rehabs they stretch out a little bit further in places where it's cheap. There's cheaper labor, cheaper material costs, things like that. And so we've actually been finding good success in Indiana and Kentucky. So that's where most of our properties are these days.
All right, sounds good, man.
Yeah.
But you said recently it's hard to pencil out the deals, right? We have been facing the similar problems, you know. It's like finding a needle in a haystack because
Yeah.
the seller expectation is too high, hasn't come up to par with what buyer is offering,
Yeah.
as well as of course the rate cap and the interest rate, right? The spread between them is still much higher.
I was
Hopefully, it will, yeah, it
I
will come back.
I think it will. I was expecting, Ted, that we were going to see a lot more distress from people that are having loans expire. But what's happening is these lenders are like, they're extending out terms. They're basically like, yeah, we'll give you another year with your current term, right? Like, at least that's what
Yeah,
I've been seeing from a lot of like these local banks that because they don't want to own the property. Like, if they have to foreclose on this property, they're not operators. And who
yeah.
wants to deal with all of that, right? So
And no one wants to take 80 cents on a dollar, right? So
that's right.
yeah.
That's right.
So
And
as long as they can get the principal and full principal back, even if they have to extend the loan for a few more months or 1 year, they're
yep,
gonna do it. But uh, there are only few banks that will do it. Others they'll just foreclose on them. Or I've seen people uh, the rate cap are getting expired. The
ooh,
people who bought properties just before COVID, there's the rate cap is going to expire, and let's see what happens if they're not able to make the payments. We'll see some
that's
distressed
right.
property coming in the market. But the
They
thing
will.
is, there is a lot of people on the side who are waiting for these kind of opportunities, so they'll get grabbed as soon as good deals comes in the market.
There are already some mezzanine funds out there that are already doing that. Like, they're
Mhm.
already seeing distress and they're like, hey, we'll come in as mezzanine debt, which means, they basically get paid right after in the capital stack, they get paid right after the lender.
Mhm.
Um, the mortgage, like the first and second mortgage.
Yeah.
Um, and they're basically private money lenders essentially that come in and basically rescue a deal. It's expensive. And I feel bad for teams that have to do that, or maybe it's a great win-win type of situation, but usually it doesn't work out well for the original operators and also for the investors. Because I know people that have had, like, I know everyone I know that have been investing in like some multifamily right now have either experienced either a partial loss or a complete loss of capital, or know someone who has had that, which is something that was uncommon, 2 years ago. All I can say, Ted, is that I feel super fortunate because all of my properties, when we originated the loans, they were 5-year fixed debt properties that started in like 2021 to 2022. So most of our loans are basically under a 5-year fixed rate until the next couple of years, which is great for us.
That is good. That is good. And
Yeah.
the other thing is, as I said, we're still underwriting, right? But our
Yep.
bread and butter is new construction. So we're
Yep.
we're pretty busy with our new construction projects of luxury single family homes and multifamily properties here in Jersey. That keeps us busy while we wait for good opportunities to buy out of state multifamily apartment buildings.
I love it. I think we might need to talk a little bit more about that because new construction is definitely something I want to get more into. As I start building my 1031 stack into trophy assets, right? I want to eventually 1031 into some trophy stuff so I can keep refinancing over and over again. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
All right. So, Derek, tell if you can tell our listeners what are the common challenges you faced in multifamily syndication. If you can tell our listeners about it.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot, right? It's difficult. I think the main thing inside of multifamily syndication, some challenges from my point of view is the quick turnaround time. Like, if you're the only one doing it, or if you're like, you're wearing all the hats, once the deal comes in, or once the opportunity comes in, like you got to be really fast, because most
Yeah.
brokers will give you 24 hours before they start listing it in the open market, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and you have to build a relationship there. So it takes time. And there's a catch 22 there, where it's like a broker's not going to take you seriously unless you've done business with them. So if you haven't done business with them, they're not going to know you. They're not going to want to waste their time, because they already have a network of people who have closed, right? So they're going to spend their time working on people with the track record. So it's kind of like an inclusive type of, type of group. And I would say, even though everyone's really supportive, like investors and general partners are really great, even helping new people get into the business, because even if you think that, there's less property out there for the number of GPs that are there, that's just not the case, because you can do more if you have better relationships with other operators. And so that's what I love
Mm-hmm.
about commercial real estate. But I think, the main difficult piece is just the sheer numbers involved and the risk that can be at play if you don't know what you're doing. It can be
Mm-hmm.
very risky. Like, you could be risking signing personally for a loan, and the economic winds blow a different way, and you could be going from being in as a GP with no capital to the deal to now owing all of the money if something goes wrong, right? And you could go bankrupt. And there are lots of people that have done that, or there's legal ramifications if you're not operating correctly according to the
Yeah.
SEC. So all of this is really detailed and difficult, but I
Mm-hmm.
think, it starts with education. And like I said, I think the main thing for me is just the speed at which it works. And you just have to be, that fast. You just have to.
Yeah. And for all your are your investors 506B or 506C compliant? How
I have a, I
what are
have
your
a,
main focus?
yeah, I have a mix of both.
Uh-huh.
Mix of both, but most of my investments right now are 506B, which is,
Okay. Friends and
sophisticated.
family,
Yeah.
506B. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
And personal
I
relationship.
yeah, personal relationship. Okay.
Yeah.
Most of them. Have uh do you do any projects with 506C or no?
Yes, I think we do. We do. We have some high net worth folks that we bring in capital for, that either sit up on the tick side because it's very big money.
Mm-hmm.
And then we also have a fund as well. The fund is a 506B fund. So,
Okay.
um, I can't mention too much more about that without breaking rules, but
Understood. Yeah. Let's
but
I understand.
but
Yeah.
yeah, no, but 506C though is something that we want to inch more towards right now at this point, just because it's easier. As everyone's
And it
accredited.
opens a vast pool of investors, right? You
Yes.
can advertise for them,
Correct.
and yeah.
Correct. Yeah, but 506B is good. Like, it's served its purpose for sure. And
Mhm.
I love talking with investors and building relationships. So that hasn't stopped us at all. And we like that.
Mhm.
It's good, because I really want to be there for, I don't have to be doing this. Like, I've already kind of got my 3 degrees of freedom, but I just like helping people. And so it kind of comes naturally anyway with the relationship.
It's great. All
Yeah.
right. Is there any specific advice you want to give to our listeners?
Hmm. Well, I mean, there's a lot of people out there, right? But I think the one thing that I'll say, and I keep saying this over and over again on LinkedIn and other places, is that your exterior world is a reflection of what your inner world looks like. So if you can focus on your mindset, right? Become a more positive person, or focus on things that you want to attract in your life intentionally, then eventually it will come to you. So just, be aware that, like, your thoughts, they become, actually, here, I was gonna I don't know if you can see this, but this is my mouse pad. And
Mm-hmm.
for those who can't, for those who are on the uh the podcast on audio only, it's watch your thoughts, for they become your words. Watch your words, because they become your actions. Watch your actions, because they become your habits. Watch your habits, because they become your character. And then watch your character, because they become your destiny. So it all starts
It's
with your
very.
thinking, right? And
Mm-hmm.
wherever your thoughts go and the quality of your communication, that determines the quality of what your life is going to be like. So improve your thoughts so that you can communicate with more people and build more trust, and then more people will gravitate towards you, and then your whole life will just kind of change. So I guess that's my main thing: is networking, build trust, start with your mindset.
Awesome. All right. Let's move to the final round of questions. Derek, are you ready?
Let's go for it, man.
All right. Which is the one book that you'll recommend, which has the most impact in your life or on your business?
Oh, big question. I wish I could give two books, but
Yeah, go ahead. Feel free.
okay, number one, number one book is The One Thing by Gary Keller.
Mhm. Yep, I like it
Incredibly
too.
impactful book, right? Like
Yeah,
helps you prioritize, and when you have priority, you've got clear, like you have clear, like you understand what it is that you're trying to do. It's clarity, and it's perfect.
clarity. Yeah.
So that book is amazing, really well written, very down to
Mhm.
earth language that anyone can pick up, and it's amazing. And then number two is Atomic Habits. I'm very much a creature of repetition, and so you can engineer your routines and start changing who you are and what you do by looking at your habits one by one and sort of constructing them very intentionally. And so I'm a huge fan of doing it at the right time and then doing the right things. So that's why I suggest those two books.
All right. And what are your main source of information to learn and grow?
There's a lot of different sources. My wife is kind of my cheat code. Um, she is like always on top of this stuff. She's the visionary for both of our businesses. And she's always like, finding these cool stuff like in naturopathic medicine and things like that. So health is also a very big part of what we do. And so she's always on top of all that. So that's one thing that's a cheat code. But I also like there's a newsletter out there called CRE Daily or Commercial Real Estate Daily, and it's just a newsletter that you can sign up for that gets you information about
Mhm.
economy and what's happening in commercial real estate. And it's very broad because commercial real estate touches all types of parts of the economy, and so
Yeah,
to learn about all these different things. So I really love that daily newsletter that comes in. It's one of the main things that I look forward to when I wake up in the morning.
awesome. All right. And finally, how can Decoding Cashflow listeners get in touch with you?
Thank you very much for this. So the easiest way to get in touch with me is just by going to our podcast page, which is elevateequity.org/podcast. Or you can just find, 3 Degrees of Freedom. You can just type it in wherever you listen to podcasts. And for those who are listening, if they want a free gift to find out more about like whether they're ready to invest in apartment buildings or in active like single family homes if they want to do it on their own, go to elevateequity.org/podcast gift, one word. And then that's an interactive PDF that I built with my team that basically tells you like where are your freedoms lined up and how much like asset equity have you built up in your mind to be able to get ready to do this. Like how ready are you to invest in real estate? And so I think your listeners would benefit for that to work with you as well, I think. So hopefully people enjoy that resource.
Yep. All right. All right, Derek. It was a pleasure talking to you. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you, Ted. This was an honor being here. I appreciate everything you do. It was so much
Yep.
fun.
Yep. Have a good one. Thanks.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening to Decoding Cashflow, brought to you by Aster Capital. If you found value in this episode, then please share it with someone who you think could benefit from it. And make sure to act on what you've learned. If you want Ted Patel to personally help you reach your goals, then feel free to set up a one-on-one call with him. Also, visit us at astercapital.com for more free resources. Content of this podcast is for informational purposes only. As always, please consult your own advisor before making any investment decisions or setting a course of action. Thanks again for joining us on this episode of Decoding Cashflow, and we'll catch you in the next episode.